سلام به بینندگان عزیز تلویزیون کانال جدید. من به اتفاق همکارم مهرداد که مسئول فیلمبرداریه امروز چهارشنبه در لیدکام در مقابل ساختمان اتحادیه ساختمان هستیم و خودمون حاضر میکنیم تا بریم تو دفتر رئیس اتحادیه مصاحبه رو انجام بدیم با این امید که به مبارزات کارگران در ایران کمک کرده باشیم. عزیزان بیننده تلویزیون کانال جدید، من ناظری هستم و فعال کمپین برای آزادی کارگران زندانی در ایران از سیدنی به اتفاق همکارم مهرداد که مسئولیت فیلمبرداری رو به عهده داره از دفتر رئیس اتحادیه ساختمانی خانم ریتا ملیا با شما صحبت میکنیم. فکر کردیم تا این با انجام این مصاحبه سهم دیگه ای رو برای تقویت مبارزات کارگران در ایران ایفا کنیم. لازمه که به آگاهی شما عزیزان بیننده برسونیم که در نتیجه تلاش و کار و ما فعالین این اتحادیه از جمله اتحادیه‌های دیگه در سطح استان بارها پشتیبانی و حمایت خودشون رو از کارگران در ایران به عمل آوردند. اجازه بدید که بریم سراغ رئیس اتحادیه که مصاحبه‌مون رو شروع کنیم. Hello Rita.
Hello.
We've been talking to each other to catch up for some times, and it is very good here today.
It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure too. So we are so delighted, can I just put in this way, by having this interview with you. As I said earlier, Mehrdad, who is filming, and I, on behalf of from the campaign to free Iranian jail workers, do run this interview with you. What about to get the start by asking you, if you wouldn't mind, to provide to our viewers a short introduction about your union.
Yes. So I'm the president of the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union.
Yes, continue.
And I'm the president of the Construction Division in New South Wales, which is one part of Australia, obviously. But our union covers workers who work in the construction industry, forest and forest products industry, so wood products, and the mining and energy industry. So blue collar, working class industries is who our union represents.
Thank you.
All right, thanks Peter. Your union, including many other unions in New South Wales, to my best memory, is the one that have been providing support to Iranian workers from one to another way. Could you please tell our viewers about your motivation, your reason to do this?
So it's very important for us in the CFMEU and many other unions like ourselves that are progressive, that we support the struggle of workers internationally. So it's not just about wages and conditions for our own members in Australia, and workers have a good standard in Australia. We have to fight to maintain those standards, but we're also conscious that many millions of workers around the world do not have the same rights and the same conditions as in Australia. And it concerns us when we hear, like in countries like Iran, that workers who seek to improve their communities, their wages and their conditions find themselves in jail, tortured, imprisoned without charge, and murdered and maimed to prevent them from fighting for what are basic human rights. So we take it as part of our responsibility as unionists to support those struggles where we can, whether it's by lobbying governments, lobbying companies, having sometimes guests as we have had, from the Iranian trade union movement come to Australia and tell their stories, because at the end of the day, we're all part of one big family and one big movement, and where we can provide some assistance and support to workers who are fighting for basic human rights. We think that's a very important thing to do.
I think, having listened to you, from the sounds of it, that you just talking about, you touched the class solidarity, I believe.
It is.
All right. Being on the issue of the class solidarity, and as far as concerned to your international activities or things like that, could you please kindly tell us what are your expectations of the effect of your guys, of support of you guys for Iranian workers?
Well, we think, in countries like Australia, who are leaders in the world, I mean, we're an advanced country, we have a functioning democracy, it's a little bit fraught sometimes, but we do recognise basic human rights, although sometimes governments don't necessarily do that in the course of time. But we think that all workers should be treated with respect, that there should be basic human rights that are recognised. And so we try and use our influence with governments and with companies and with other social movements to bring to bear some pressure so that things change in these other countries. So whilst at the end of the day workers in countries like Iran and other places fight their own battles and do fight really quite important battles, and like I say, sometimes they lose their lives in the fight, if we can bring some support, expose injustice, and put pressure on governments to treat people in a fair and respectful way, then we try and do that.
All right. I'm going to look after the item of pressurising the government a little bit later, maybe. Sure. But before I do so, I do remember Paul McAlee, the president of the Maritime Union, state president of the Maritime Union, said to me a while ago that they do acknowledge as to what extent hardly Iranian workers suffering simply in fighting for their rights.
That's right.
Are you sharing his view? What is your comprehension of the Islamic Republic of Iran? And if you wouldn't mind analysing your view about our views about the treatment of the Islamic Republic of Iran towards workers in Iran.
Well, my understanding is that the state there does not support the right of workers to organise, to have well-resourced and strong unions that fight for their members, and that in fact workers are jailed and workers can be tortured and sometimes are killed in that struggle, and that's supported by the state, whether it's the employers and the state combined or the state. And we find it abhorrent that there are political prisoners, trade unionists, workers and other activists who fight for justice treated in this way, and that in 2015 it's unacceptable that these rights are not recognised, and that in fact. And so our union, for example, last year at its national conference passed a resolution condemning the Iranian government in its approach to workers and trade unionists, that we called for the immediate and unconditional release of trade unionists and political prisoners in Iran. And then we condemned the regime for persecuting workers and reaffirming our support for the struggle that workers in Iran are fighting for freedom, the right to organise, proper, social security, welfare, equality, and justice. So, and we think that the international community as a whole should do more to expose this injustice, and then to collectively put pressure on the state to cease and desist from treating people in this way. How
would you then analyse the Iranian government? How would you?
That they at this current time don't have respect for workers and aren't recognising basic human rights like the right to organise, the right to be a member of the union, the right to have basic wages and conditions. I mean, if people are working and the state and companies are making a profit out of that labour, then workers should be entitled to a fair day's pay. And, in 2015 we shouldn't have slave conditions.